Hello everybody and welcome back to the Night Garden. I am VampireAntihero and I'm here to talk to you about art today. So before we get started, I want to say that this footage starts in real time. Usually my footage is sped up, but this is my actual work speed here. So keep that in mind as you're watching this first bit. I wanted to continue talking about material studies as kind of an extension from last week. Last week we talked about daily studies, and material studies kind of fall into that category. The thought of a material study is just to really study how something looks the way that it looks and to try and render it as closely as possible or as stylized as possible in order to get that effect without kind of compromising your art style. Leather is one of my favorite things to study. That's why we have leather going on in the background here. It's really versatile. It can work like a cloth if you have a soft, supple leather, or it can be really stiff and rigid. It plays well with a lot of other materials, that kind of thing. So with a material study, I see most people start out with a ball, which is why I started out with a ball here. It's a good way to kind of see how something looks on a 3D surface. And a sphere isn't going to help you figure out how it looks on every 3D surface, obviously, but it does give you a rough idea of how the material will react with light in a simple way. It helps you to kind of play with your color a little bit and help you see how it would react in a 3D space. That's why we're starting with that. Anyway, spheres. Spheres are really nice. You can see me kind of coming back and adding some texture to the leather here. The way that I'm doing that is I work with a low opacity round brush, and I'm just switching between transparent and my color choice and kind of blending that in together until I get something that I'm pretty happy with. Then I go back and re-add my shadow, and you can see I don't really have that detail in my highlight either. It's less in my deep shadow, but it can be seen pretty well in my midtone and where it transitions into the deep shadow. So now we are switching to a speed up just in order to make things a little bit quicker and easier to watch as I explain kind of where I'm coming from. I'm starting with this dark cyan color. This is something I picked up from Hardy Fowler, who is my mentor. But I don't always start with the cyan. I do start with a dark cool tone that's about that level of light. So like an off black kind of cold tone. And then I start building up my modeled texture on top of that. This kind of works in shadows for me, so I don't really need to worry about my shadow placements later. I'm kind of just using my transparent and color brush interchangeably in order to build up those lights and shadows, basically doing a value painting, but with the color that I want to use. So this also kind of gave us a direction of light with how I rendered these belt buckles. So then next we are going to be working on a braid. Oh yeah, I forgot to do the back of the belt, so I'm just adding that in by selecting what I made and making a hard edge for it. But next we are going to be doing a braided leather. Braided leathers are really fun because you basically have a repeating pattern. So you can see that I have drawn a braid here and I'm filling it in with that same dark color. I honestly wish that I had gone with a slightly bluer tone for this one's shadow, just because the orange doesn't play super nice with this cyan. But I digress. I went with that mottled look for this leather. I'm not the happiest with this braid. I should have done it a smooth leather. But You'll get the picture. This is why we do studies, because these aren't necessarily meant to look nice. They're more so just meant to learn, to understand the material that you're working on. So leather is one of those things that it has a high shine to it in a lot of situations. In these belts, I tried to lower the shine, but I like doing braids because it's a repeating pattern. So I can do one bit of the braid and then copy and move it over, and then I have a pretty convincing braid. And this one isn't perfect. I had to warp it a little bit in order to get it to fit where it needed to go and that kind of thing. But playing around a little bit with it usually makes it so that it works pretty good. And you can see the results here as I put it together on screen. It honestly comes together very quickly with a little bit of warping. Even if I didn't draw it the most accurately, it still comes together in a way that looks pretty convincing when it's done and kind of feels realistic. It's pretty expressionistic in the mark making too. Like, it's very, very simple and just kind of go with the flow mentality. So for the braid, I wanted to make it so that it looked like a cohesive belt. So if you think about how a belt lays over each other, the braid would actually be facing the opposite way when you do the back belt. So I copied what I had done and flipped it horizontally in order to look like it was going the opposite direction, and then just erased the parts that didn't need to still be there. So it gave me a pretty convincing overlap, and then I just kind of filled in the last little bit with another copy. So just like that, that's put together in, like, I think that took me 15 minutes total. And if I had taken more time drawing the braid, then it would have taken me less time total to put that together, because my braid would have been more accurate. So here I am just kind of enforcing the shadows, pushing certain things back, pulling certain things forward. You can see the edges are really defined on this belt, and that's because I want it to look like the leather is kind of tilting up towards the light one way and down towards the shadow the other. So then I went through and added the little notches to the base layer so that it looked like it was actually overlapping instead of just kind of drawn into a pattern. So that's where this went. And then I adjusted the color a little bit so that it worked better with that green, because the orange that I originally picked was a little bright with that green. And here I am going back and adding some damage to the first belt, kind of scratches and stuff like that. Leather scratches very easily, so that's where I was going for with that. I think that's about all that I have to say about this, so I'm going to throw some music on and I'll be back in a minute. So for the folded leather, what I wanted to show is that the back of leather typically is a little bit darker and has a kind of almost chalky texture visually. So I switched to a chalky brush and keep it that dark color. Make sure that the actual modeled area is a lot brighter so that it comes across that that is the unfinished side of the leather. It's a very specific kind of texture on that side. And then it's just kind of the same things as the rest of the renders. It's adding in the shadows and making sure that my modeled texture is only on the one side, making sure that it kind of blends well and looks realistic. Defining those edges, making sure that it's not just like a digital slushy mush. And then I wanted to add some damage to this particular leather. Adding damage to leather is a lot of fun because it's basically crackle, and it tends to come off as very, very convincing with very little to do. This last one on this sheet is to describe a fold where it's actually joined to a new piece of leather. So I wanted to kind of see how the shadow interacted with the stitching and how to put together a joined piece of leather. And there you have it. Here are the finished results. I hope that you enjoyed watching this today and that you learned a little bit something about how to approach material studies. I might do more material studies in the future, more of a tutorial version on how to render specific materials, or I might come back and show leather again. I'm not sure. Let me know what you think in the comments below if that's something that you would be interested in. But this is the finished product, and I hope that you all have a great night. Thank you to all of my Ko-fi supporters. I could not keep doing this without you. You guys make it so that I can keep the channel running. Your support goes quite a long way, and I appreciate everything that you guys do. Make sure that you drink your water and do what you can. I love you all.